Patty it is.
You better name this one Pat. He's a boy.
Laura.
For 9 seasons, Little House on the Prairie made millions of families sit down together every week and feel something real. It looked simple: a farmhouse, a dirt road, a family trying to do right by each other. But behind all of that warmth, there was a set full of secrets, pranks, accidents, and stories that never made it into the episodes. So here are 13 weird facts you didn't know about Little House on the Prairie. Fact 13. The Carrie tumble was a complete accident. If you watch the show, you remember the opening credits. The Ingalls girls running through a meadow, laughter, sunlight, and then little Carrie tumbling down the hillside and rolling to the bottom. It plays every episode. It became inseparable from the show's identity, and for 50 years people have watched it with a smile. It is one of the most recognizable moments in television history, and it was never supposed to happen. The twins who played Carrie, Lindsay, and Sydney Greenbush were just 3 years old when the opening credits were filmed. The production team had wanted the hillside covered in prairie wildflowers, but the California weather during filming was too dry for real flowers to survive. The solution was to wire the hillside with plastic flowers, stiff, artificial blooms that looked fine on camera. The problem was that those rigid stems, combined with the old-fashioned period shoes the girls were wearing, made the ground more slippery and unpredictable than anyone had anticipated. One of the twins lost her footing and went straight down the hill. Michael Landon watched it happen from behind the camera. He could have stopped the take, reset, and filmed it again properly. Instead, he decided to keep it. He thought it was too charming and too real to replace with something staged. The crew agreed. The fall stayed in, and it aired in the opening credits of every single episode for 9 seasons. So one of the most beloved moments in the show's history came from a 3-year-old tripping over fake flowers on a hillside in Simi Valley, California, which, when you think about it, is a very fitting origin story for a show that always found beauty in the unplanned. Fact 12. Pa's famous hair was a complete fiction. Michael Landon's thick, dark, flowing hair was one of his most recognizable features. On Bonanza, on Little House, on Highway to Heaven, wherever Landon appeared, the hair was there. Famous enough that one journalist noted the show could double as a shampoo commercial. What most viewers never knew was that it was entirely manufactured. Landon had started going gray prematurely while still in his 20s during his Bonanza years. Rather than embrace the gray, he went straight to the drugstore and started dyeing his hair himself at home using Clairol medium ash brown. He didn't like going to salons, so he handled it himself, a habit he kept all the way through his years on Little House on the Prairie. The problem was the California sun. The show's exterior scenes were all filmed at the Big Sky Ranch in Simi Valley, and after just a few days under that relentless outdoor heat, Landon's dyed hair would begin to shift from brown to a faint, then increasingly noticeable shade of lavender. The crew had to quietly adjust the lighting on set to avoid filming Pa Ingalls with purple hair, a running logistical problem that delayed production on multiple occasions. Landon himself described the situation later with characteristic self-deprecating humor, noting in a 1988 interview that without the dye, the middle of his head would be white like a skunk. He acknowledged that he once had the perfect opportunity to become a spokesperson for Clairol, until the purple hair situation made that somewhat complicated. Eventually, he gave up the DIY approach and let a professional handle it on set. The lavender episodes, as a result, gradually ceased.
Cette amulette vos apporte.
Fact 11. The set was filmed in suffocating heat, and people fainted. The The show looked like a peaceful slice of rural 19th century America. What it actually looked like on any given filming day was something considerably less peaceful. All the exterior scenes were shot at the Big Sky Ranch in Simi Valley, California, a 10,000-acre location with a very specific climate that the cast and crew described consistently and with great feeling as brutally and almost intolerably hot. On a good day, temperatures on the ranch sat in the low 90s. On ordinary days, the thermometer hit triple digits. On the worst days, it crept toward 110 degrees and stayed there. The child actors wore full period costumes, heavy cotton stockings, petticoats, pinafores, bonnets, all designed for the cold winters of Minnesota and all deeply unsuited to a California summer. Adults were in similarly restrictive clothing. There was no relief from it. The production schedule demanded that summer school breaks be used for location filming, which meant the youngest members of the cast spent their summers baking on a ranch instead of swimming. The heat took its toll. On the very first day of filming, both Allison Argrim, who played Nellie Olson, and an assistant director passed out from heat exhaustion. It was not a one-time event. Throughout the run of the series, the temperature regularly became enough of an issue that it slowed or stopped production entirely.
Up we go, me love.
The young cast learned early on that working on Little House was not the cozy experience the finished episode suggested. Melissa Gilbert has described arriving on set at dawn and knowing within the first hour exactly what kind of day it was going to be. The kind where you watched the horizon and tried to find shade that wasn't there. Fact 10, Sean Penn made his acting debut on the show and also passed out. This is the one that tends to surprise people. Long before Sean Penn won Academy Awards for Mystic River and Milk, before Fast Times at Ridgemont High, before anyone in Hollywood knew who he was, he appeared as an uncredited background kid in the Season 1 episode, The Voice of Tinker Jones, which aired on December 4th, 1974. The connection was family. The episode was directed by Sean Penn's father, Leo Penn, who cast his wife Eileen Ryan and his then 14-year-old son Sean in small roles. Sean appeared as a kid in the crowd. No lines, no close-ups, no credit. By most accounts, he would have been invisible to viewers watching the episode at home. What made his appearance memorable to the people actually on set was what happened during filming. The scene involved a metal smelter operated by the episode's title character, Tinker Jones. The heat from the smelter combined with the already extreme outdoor temperatures to create conditions that were genuinely dangerous. Allison Argrim fainted first, then Sean Penn went down. Melissa Gilbert, who has told this story multiple times over the years, was apparently unaffected, which she attributes to no particular virtue, just an unusually high tolerance for heat. Penn recovered, finished the episode, and went on to become one of the most acclaimed actors of his generation. The Little House credit barely appears in biographies, but it's there in the records.
Que cette amulette vous apporte bonne fortune.
Fact 9. All that home-cooked prairie food was canned stew and KFC. One of the most comforting images in the show was the Ingalls family sitting down to a meal that Ma had clearly spent the afternoon preparing. Whatever it was, it looked hearty and homemade and exactly right for a family living off the land in the 1870s. The steam coming off the pot, the way Caroline ladled it out, the family bowing their heads in gratitude. It all looked completely genuine. Every bit of it was from a can. Regardless of what Caroline Ingalls announced she was serving, rabbit stew, venison, chicken, squirrel, the actual food on the plates in virtually every dinner scene was Dinty Moore canned beef stew. It was chosen for practical reasons. It photographed well in the studio lighting, it could be prepared quickly and in consistent quantity across multiple takes, and it didn't require anyone to actually cook. The frontier family that the show celebrated for its self-sufficiency was being fed by a pull-tab tin on every table scene. The fried chicken was the one exception, and it had its own very specific source, Kentucky Fried Chicken. When Laura was seen pulling a drumstick out of her tin lunch pail at school, that drumstick had arrived on set in a familiar red and white bucket. When Ma announced she'd made fried chicken and the family sat down to eat it, the chicken had not come from the Ingalls family's coop. It had come from a franchise a few miles away. The show that spent 9 seasons celebrating homesteading, self-reliance, and living close to the land was catering its meal scenes with canned goods and fast food. Nobody seems to have had a problem with this. It is perhaps the most efficient behind-the-scenes detail in the entire series. Fact 8. Allison Argrim auditioned for both Laura and Mary before getting Nellie. Allison Argrim became so thoroughly identified with Nellie Oleson, the show's resident antagonist, ringletted and insufferable and absolutely delighted with herself, that it is difficult to imagine anyone else in the role. But Nellie was not Arngrim's first or even second choice when she walked into the audition process. She had auditioned twice for other roles before being cast. The first time, she read for Laura Ingalls, the lead role that went to Melissa Gilbert. Argrim and Laura had exactly nothing in common as characters. Laura was warm, impulsive, and deeply empathetic. But an audition is an audition. The second time, she tried for Mary Ingalls, the thoughtful and more restrained older sister, which went to Melissa Sue Anderson. Again, no match. By the time she came in a third time and read for Nellie Oleson, the producers hired her on the spot. Argrim had finally found the character she was built for, and the producers recognized it immediately. The role that suited her most was the one she almost didn't get to try for. Argrim has talked about this in interviews over the years with her characteristic dry humor, noting that she was rejected twice before anyone figured out where she actually belonged. Once they did, the fit was so complete that Michael Landon reportedly kept her on the show even during periods when Catherine McGregor, Nellie's on-screen mother, was generating friction on set, simply because the Oleson family dynamic was too central to the show to disrupt. In real life, Argrim and Melissa Gilbert, on-screen enemies for 9 seasons, became close friends almost immediately after their first meeting in the makeup trailer, and remained so throughout the show's run and for decades afterward.
Come on!
Fact 7. Michael Landon recycled Bonanza, scripts for Little House episodes. When the creative demands of producing, directing, writing, and starring in a long-running television series started to pile up, Michael Landon had a solution that was either efficient or quietly cheeky, depending on how you look at it. He went back to his old scripts from Bonanza and reworked them for Little House on the Prairie. The most documented example involves the Bonanza episode, A Matter of Circumstance, in which Landon's character, Little Joe, suffers a serious infection far from the ranch, with no one able to help him in time. The same dramatic core appeared on Little House as A Matter of Faith, with the infected character changed from Little Joe to Caroline Ingalls, and the setting transposed from the Ponderosa to a family camping trip in the wilderness. The essential situation, a loved one gravely ill, family separated, racing against time, was structurally the same story in a different costume. Landon did not try to hide this. He spoke openly about revisiting story structures that had worked before, viewing them as sound dramatic templates rather than recycled material. He trusted that the characters, the setting, and the emotional specificity of Little House were distinct enough to carry a familiar structure into entirely new territory. The audience, for its part, seems to have agreed. Both episodes were well received, and most viewers never connected the two.
She's fine, Aunt Mike. Be a foal by morning.
Fact 6. The set blew up on purpose in the series finale, the television movie Little House. The last farewell aired on February 6, 1984, and it ended in a way that nobody watching could quite believe. The entire town of Walnut Grove was blown up, not metaphorically, not off-screen. The buildings that the show had used for 9 seasons were demolished on camera with actual explosives, reduced to rubble while the characters of the town watched from a hillside. The in-story explanation involved a greedy land baron claiming legal ownership of the town and its property. The residents, faced with the choice of surrendering their homes and livelihoods or destroying everything themselves, chose destruction. One by one, the buildings went down, the church, the store, the houses, until there was nothing left to take. It was a genuinely unusual finale for a show built around community and hope, and it landed with viewers as both shocking and somehow right. The real explanation behind the demolition had more to do with a lease agreement than a dramatic vision. Landon had built the outdoor Walnut Grove set on land leased from several large companies, with the legal commitment that when filming ended, the land would be returned in the same condition it was in before construction. Clearing the set properly would have required moving every structure out piece by piece, a time-consuming and expensive process. Demolishing it on camera solved the practical problem while simultaneously providing a finale that Landon described as a strong, irreversible ending appropriate for pioneers. The buildings that had defined the look of the show for 9 years were gone in a matter of minutes. Landon later said he had no regrets about it.
Carolyn! Up here!
Fact 5. The show almost got canceled in season 2. The first season of Little House on the Prairie was a genuine audience success. Critics were initially mixed. Some found it sentimental, others compared it unfavorably to The Waltons, which was earning strong ratings at the time. But viewers showed up in large numbers, and NBC was pleased enough to renew it without much hesitation. Then season 2 arrived, and the ratings dropped sharply enough that the network began having serious conversations about cancellation. The show that would go on to run for 9 seasons, win over audiences across more than 100 countries, and become one of the most beloved television dramas in American history, was, in its second year, genuinely considered to be at risk. The reasons for the ratings drop are not fully documented. Audience tastes shifted, competing shows drew viewers away, and the second season had some uneven storytelling. What is documented is that the conversations inside NBC about the show's future were real. Landon pushed back, continued developing the show's characters and storylines, and the ratings gradually recovered heading into season 3. What saved it is not reducible to a single decision. The show found its footing, the characters deepened, and NBC ultimately held its position. But the near cancellation in season 2 is a useful reminder that the show's eventual place in television history was not inevitable. It had to survive its own difficult period before becoming the institution it became, which is, in a way, fitting for a show that was always fundamentally about perseverance. Fact 4. Catherine McGregor was nearly fired for being difficult on set. Catherine McGregor played Harriet Olsen, Nellie's mother, the show's most reliable source of self-importance and manufactured offense, with a commitment that was, by all accounts, total. She was perfect in the role. She walked onto the set as Harriet Olsen and stayed there completely until someone called cut. Nobody ever had to ask whether McGregor was giving her full effort. she was also, according to multiple sources, a significant disruption when the camera wasn't rolling. According to Allison Argrim's memoir, Confessions of a Prairie Bitch, McGregor argued regularly with directors about how scenes should be staged, attempted to offer unsolicited direction to other cast members, and created enough friction that even her on-screen husband, Richard Bull, who played the endlessly patient Nels Oleson with a gentleness that felt biographical, eventually had to have a direct conversation with her about it. Michael Landon, who ran a tight production and generally had low tolerance for set problems, reportedly reached the point of seriously weighing whether to let her go. He didn't. And the reason is straightforward. Her performance as Mrs. Olson was simply too valuable to lose. The show needed its antagonist to be convincingly, entertainingly awful, and McGregor delivered on that completely and consistently every time the camera rolled. Whatever friction she generated off-camera was absorbed by the production, because the alternative, replacing her, was a worse problem than keeping her. Mrs. Olson stayed. Harriet kept causing trouble in Walnut Grove for 9 seasons, and the show was better for it.
Time now. There's lots to do tomorrow. We all need our rest.
Fact 3. Jason Bateman's first TV role was on this show.
It's the
Sean Penn was not the only future Hollywood star who got his start on Little House on the Prairie. In 1981, a young actor named Jason Bateman landed the recurring role of James Cooper Ingalls, an orphan boy adopted by the Ingalls family during the show's later seasons. It was his first ever television role. He was 12 years old. Bateman stayed with the show through its remaining seasons and, by his own account, found the experience formative in ways that went beyond simply learning the craft of acting. He has described Michael Landon in interviews as one of the most influential figures of his early career, not just as a director offering guidance to a young performer, but as an example of how to carry a production responsibly. Landon ran an enormous, complex show while simultaneously writing, directing, producing, and playing the lead role. And he did it in a way that made the people working for him feel genuinely looked after. Bateman has said directly that watching Landon operate taught him something about the relationship between a show's lead and its crew, that the person at the center of a production sets the culture, for better or worse, and that Landon said it well. In 2019, Bateman won a Primetime Emmy Award for directing an episode of Ozark, decades after his first appearance on a Walnut Grove soundstage. He has credited his Little House years as a foundational part of what shaped him as a director. From a farm in 19th century Minnesota to prestige drama television in the 21st century is a considerable distance, but the line between them, in Bateman's career at least, runs directly through Stage 15 at MGM. Fact 2. Ray Bolger found the yellow brick road hidden under the stage floor. When the show moved its interior filming from Paramount Studios to MGM Studios, it settled into Stage 15, one of the largest sound stages on the lot, with enough floor space to accommodate the show's interior sets and then some. What nobody initially realized was that Stage 15 came with a remarkable piece of film history hidden underneath it. MGM had shot The Wizard of Oz on that stage in 1939. The yellow brick road, the actual physical set piece built for the film, had been constructed on that floor, and when the production wrapped, part of it had been left in place rather than removed. Over the following decades, it had been covered over, built on top of, and largely forgotten. In Season 5, Ray Bolger, who had played the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz and was by then in his mid-70s, guest starred in an episode of Little House. During production, a section of the Stage 15 floor was removed to access an area where an old defunct oil heater had been torn out. And there, underneath the flooring of a 1970s television production, was the yellow brick road, still intact, still in place, exactly where it had been laid 4 decades earlier. Bulger's reaction, by every account from people present that day, was one of genuine and visible emotion. He had walked that road as the Scarecrow in 1939, a young man playing one of the most iconic roles in cinema history. And here it was again, in a different decade, on a different show, found by accident. The cast gathered around him. The children on set were captivated. Production paused while everyone took in what they were looking at. It is the kind of moment that sounds too perfect to be true, and yet it is documented by multiple members of the cast and crew who were standing right there when it happened.
How much longer, Charles?
Till we settle, I don't know.
Fact 1. The show aired in 110 countries, more than Dallas. Little House on the Prairie was a massive hit in the United States. 9 seasons, devoted audiences, strong enough ratings to survive even its difficult second season, and emerge as one of NBC's signature programs. What tends to get overlooked is just how enormous it was everywhere else. The show aired in 110 countries around the world. To put that number in context, Dallas, the glossy primetime soap opera that dominated global television in the late 1970s and early 1980s and became genuinely famous as an international phenomenon, aired in 96 countries. Little House on the Prairie, with its simple stories about a farm family in 19th century Minnesota, reached more of the world than Dallas. Nobody who worked on the show predicted that when they filmed the pilot in 1974. The show was particularly embraced in France, where it developed a devoted following that lasted long after the American broadcast ended. The character of Nellie Oleson was, according to multiple sources, a specific favorite there. The French appreciated a good villain, apparently, especially one in petticoats. Japan was another market where the show connected deeply, as were countries across South America and the Middle East. As of the early 2020s, the show was still actively airing in 30 countries worldwide. In the United States, it runs on Cozy TV, UPTV, and Hallmark Drama, where it remains the most watched non-movie program. 50 years after a 2-hour pilot movie aired on NBC on March 30th, 1974, the Ingalls family is still on someone's television screen somewhere in the world every single day. Not bad for a show set on a dirt farm in 19th century Minnesota. Not bad at all. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on more fascinating stories.